Before I start, I'd like to thank you all for your service. The time spent, your attention is greatly appreciated. I know what a huge sacrifice it was for you to serve on this case. This is what makes this country great. This process that we've gone through is what distinguishes us from every other country in the world. It's been an honor and a pleasure to try this case before you. The way this works, ladies and gentlemen, is that I sum up first. The prosecutor goes after me. I will not be able to comment or dispute anything that he says. As the judge told you, and I'm sure he'll tell you again, what the attorneys say is not evidence. Because I can't respond, I'm going to ask you to listen carefully to everything he says. Make sure the evidence supports what he says. Because if you remember in his opening statement, he told you when Michael Barisone drove down to the farmhouse and confronted Lauren Canarac, he was angry. He was furious. Those were his words. I submit there is no evidence whatsoever in this record to support that statement. To the contrary, it's the opposite. Even Robert Goodwin and Lauren Canarac described Michael Barisone as calm. He used the word sorrowful. It was the defense that brought out that Lauren Canarac was the one that was pissed. That's her word. She was the one that came stomping down to confront Michael Barisone. She's the one who described herself in her original statement as being Miss Badass. The same description of her conduct with an earlier altercation, where she got up into Michael Barisone's face. She pushed him back 20 feet or so. He tried to leave. She prevented him. Remember? She slammed his door shut. He was pleading with her to leave. Those were her words. With respect to the law of insanity, the judge will instruct you. Again, I'd just like to point out that the law recognizes that a forbidden act should not be punished criminally unless done with a knowledge of wrongdoing. If someone is found not guilty by reason of insanity, it does not mean that he will be freed or that he will be indefinitely committed to a mental institution. The court will hold hearings, make determinations as to whether, there are things to adequately protect that person, but more importantly, to protect the public. In my opening statement, I told you what I thought this case was about. Far different than as the prosecutor described it in his statement. After you've seen all the evidence, I hope you agree that it's not a simple cut and dry case as the prosecutor suggested. I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that the state has not met its burden. I submit you should find Michael Barisone not guilty. Clearly, it's horrible that Lauren Canarak was shot. No person should have to go through that. It's important that you look at the evidence, though. And I submit to you, as I did in my opening statement, that the only evidence as to how the shooting occurred comes from both Canarak and Goodwin. The investigation starts and stops with them. It stops with Robert Goodwin pointing to Michael Barisone and saying he's the shooter. Two people who I had indicated in my opening, and I believe the evidence has confirmed, have a motive to lie, who have changed their stories, left important things out, important facts, and have now walked into this courtroom, put their hand on this Bible, looked you all in the eyes, and lied to you. The judge is going to instruct you as to a legal concept. It's called false in one, false in all. If you believe that someone intentionally came into this courtroom and intentionally lied about a significant fact, you can disregard their entire testimony. I submit that that's exactly what you should do with Lauren Canarak and Robert Goodwin's testimony. Before I get into their specific testimony, I'd like to talk to you about the inadequate investigation that I mentioned in my opening statement. Reasonable doubt, the linchpin of the criminal justice system. Reasonable doubt may arise from the evidence itself or the lack of evidence. As I said, the prosecutor's entire case is based on Canarak and Goodwin. The investigation stopped after Goodwin pointed Barisone out. The evidence is clear that the prosecutor never looked at the events leading up to the incident. The evidence will show that they ignored critical, precise evidence which would have shown you exactly what happened. Evidence that if they had conducted even the most basic scientific analysis, would have addressed many questions, unanswered questions, that I suggest you should have.
Attacking the evidence, also attacking the state's two star witnesses. We saw that one coming. We'll have more of the closing arguments in New Jersey versus Michael Barisone right after this. Stay with us.
And now.
Back, we're watching two courtrooms this hour. Jury selection set to begin in Virginia in the multi-million-dollar defamation case between actors Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Amber Heard just arrived at the Fairfax County Courthouse a few moments ago. We expect Johnny Depp to arrive at any moment. Also this hour, it's closing arguments. They're underway in the trial against this man, the former Olympian, Michael Barisone, highly regarded equestrian man. He's accused of attempted murder for shooting at two of his former tenants. Right now, let's get you back into the courtroom. The defense is giving its close. Let's go in live.
I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that is reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt begins when the camera is shut off. The prosecutor has to answer that. You should demand a response to those questions. If he says it doesn't matter, I have two eyewitnesses, Mr. Balinkas. Question everything else that comes after that. Those witnesses had a plan to destroy Michael Barisone. One of those witnesses is the person who testified was the one who disabled and turned off that camera. Let me throw a little more gas on that fire. When the police get there, no one's holding a gun. The gun is on the ground. Why didn't the police do DNA, fingerprint testing on the gun, the magazine, or the casings? Why didn't they do that gunshot residue on Michael Barisone's hand to determine if he had fired the weapon? You saw in Captain Fellini's affidavit that the judge gave them the right to do that. Why not do that? If you are searching for the truth, do everything. Cross your T's, dot your I's. And why didn't they ask for gunshot residue testing on Cataract or Goodwin? No. The prosecutor wants you to rely on those witnesses. Let's talk about their crime scene investigation. I submit that the investigation conflicts with Cataract and Goodwin's testimony, their version of events. They say 3 shots were fired. Look at the photos and all the evidence that comes before you. They only found 2 shell casings. Where's the third? You can't have a shot without a shell casing. I submit that Cataract and Goodwin are lying about that third shot. Is it possible, is it conceivable that one of the 2 bullets that had gone through Cataract's body hit the door? Is that possible? Should anything have been done to try to confirm that or rule that out? If there is no third shot, there is no attempted murder on Robert Goodwin. Let's look at Cataract's testimony. Again, a witness who admitted on the stand to having a plan to destroy Michael Barisone. Stop and think for a second of the magnitude of that statement. Not only was she angry or upset with Michael Barisone, but she made a conscious decision to try to destroy someone. Who does that? Who goes to the extent that Lauren Cataract and Robert Goodwin went to? If you recall Cataract's testimony, the evidence came out on cross, not on direct with the prosecutor's question, that prior to the shooting, she was planning on suing Michael Barisone. I also brought out that she currently is suing Michael Barisone and has a financial interest in the outcome. I submit, if you believe Lauren Cataract walked into this courtroom, put her hand on this Bible, and intentionally lied to you, disregard her testimony. Why do I say that? Now, the judge allowed certain evidence in for a limited purpose to impeach Ms. Cataract, or evidence that relates to Michael Barisone's state of mind. This is not character evidence. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that Lauren Cataract lied to you numerous times. Let's go over the lies. Number 1, She lied about the recordings. She lied that all the recordings, where she and Goodwin were not present, were recorded from her locker in the stable. And Goodwin jumps in and says the exact same thing, but we'll deal with him in a minute. That statement is clearly a lie. There is evidence in the record that proves she's lying. Recall Robert Goodwin's testimony when he recorded the meeting with Cataract, the father, and their own lawyer, where they're talking about the recording and where Cataract said that all the recordings were done from her locker. And you recall Robert Goodwin's response? At least that one, ha, ha. That testimony, number one, proves that Cataract is lying about that, I submit, but it also casts doubt on their attorney, Edward David, which I submit to you, you should disregard everything that he says. He was one of the two people that Cataract said gave him permission to do these secret recordings. When I questioned him or tried to talk to him with regards to anything about these recordings, what was his response? I have no recollection of that. You know, he wanted to stay away, as far away from that as he possibly could. Why? Well, maybe they were illegal. You know, maybe his license may be at jeopardy. He said over and over again, I don't recall having a discussion. Even when I showed him the transcript that I cross-examined Goodwin with, where they talk about the recording and where it's being done. Oh, I don't have a recollection. Oh, it was 2.5 years. He didn't even want to look at the transcript. What does that tell you? And if anyone else, strike that. And further with regards to Davis, when you recall his testimony, he testified on the phone that he heard a struggle. And then he said he testified here, a shot. But in his original statement, he said clear as a bell that he didn't know it was a shot. But after talking to everyone, being prepped for trial, he comes in here and testifies under oath that it was a shot. If you need further evidence that Cataract is lying about those recordings, recall Mary Haskins Graves' testimony, Mary DeFranco's testimony, the attorney for Michael Barisone, Stephen Tarshish's testimony. Those three witnesses unequivocally told you that during this time they had private conversations with Michael Barisone in the office and in the club room. And that after those conversations, Lauren Cataract posted their exact words. The office has been testified is over 100 feet away from her locker. The club room is literally 40 feet. Both rooms are separated from Lauren Cataract's locker by a closed, solid door. Did she lie in this courtroom? I submit there's overwhelming evidence to support that. I submit that she lied about her.
All right, let's get a break in here. More of the closing arguments from the defense right after this. Stay with us.
With Worthy.com.
I'm Julia Janae in Portland, Oregon for the romance novelist murder trial. And this is Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Welcome back. Court TV bringing you live coverage from Virginia and New Jersey this morning. In Fairfax, Virginia, Johnny Depp is about to be face-to-face with his ex-wife Amber Heard. Jury selection begins this morning in the multi-million-dollar defamation case between the two actors. This is a look at Johnny Depp arriving at the courthouse just a few moments ago. Amber Heard arrived about a half hour ago. They will be face-to-face for jury selection again starting this morning. Expected to only take, believe it or not, a day, according to the judge. Our cameras are there. Also this morning, closing arguments in the trial for the former Olympian accused of attempted murder. It's underway. Michael Barisone faces 2 counts of attempted murder. The defense is arguing in their closing that the shooting victim, alleged victim they call her, Lauren Cataract, was not telling the truth when she came into the courtroom and testified. Let's go back live for the close.
You know, we were concerned the barn was going to burn down. Do you really think that that was her motivation? Or do you think it was part of her plan, like all these other things, to destroy Michael Barisone? If you're concerned about a faulty dryer, if you're concerned about it possibly starting a fire, pull the plug out. You don't need to write a 2-page letter trying to get Michael Barisone kicked out of his last place of refuge. Do you really honestly think, ladies and gentlemen, that that was her motivation? A faulty dryer. Based on everything that you know at this point, I submit that she lied to you. Finally, with regards to her bold-faced, despicable lies in this courtroom, is she lied about not searching for Dyfus Anonymous hotline. Recall her testimony. When I confronted her, did you call Dyfus? No. When I confronted her on the stand with her own phone records indicating that she had searched Dyfus's anonymous hotline on 2 separate occasions, on 2 separate days, what was her response? How could she explain that? Her explanation? Oh, someone must have stolen my phone. And then she tries to blame it on Justin Hardin. Do you honestly believe there's any possibility on the face of the earth to think that Justin Hardin would steal her phone to look something up? Not once, but on 2 separate occasions. If she's lying about this, she's lying about the shooting. She's lying about the incident. If the lies are not good enough for you good enough to convince you not to believe her, look at her inconsistent statements. And just like you do in everyday conversations, if someone says something one time and then comes back and says something different, don't you normally question the truthfulness of those statements? And again, it depends on the significance, but that's a common thing that all of you do. Look at Cataract's inconsistent statements. She originally told the prosecutor's office soon after the incident that she disappeared. She doesn't even know where she went. On cross, when I tried to question her with respect to that, she comes up with this crazy story that she meant disappearing in her mind. And then I asked her, did you run away or walk away from the area? And she demonstrated what she claims that she did. She also never mentioned in her original statement that she beat Michael Barisone for 7 minutes. on direct, before I cross-examined her, before I showed her the post in her own words about beating him for 7 minutes, she tried to make light of what she did. She said, I hit him a few times. 7 minutes is not a few times. She testified before you that she had gone up and down the stairs numerous times. She never said that in her original.
All right, we'll step aside, take a break. We want to thank Rosalind Charles. Coming up tonight on Court TV, the original true crime series, Someone They Knew, with Tamara Hall. That's tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern. When we come back, we will have, we'll take you back to New Jersey. We're also watching that courthouse where jury selection is beginning in Virginia. That's next. Stay with us.
Screen right now.
Top of the hour. Welcome back to Court TV Live. Actors Johnny Depp and Amber Heard are both now in a Virginia courtroom as jury selection is set to begin at any moment in the high-profile defamation case that Depp started by suing his ex-wife for $50 million in damages. This is video just a few moments ago. Johnny Depp arriving at the courthouse for a case that's expected to last several weeks. Jury selection is only going to last, according to the judge, 1 day. The damages that Johnny Depp is asking for are $50 million, and the reason, he says, career setbacks caused by an op-ed that Amber Heard wrote back in 2018. In her response to Depp's suit, Heard is pursuing a $100 million defamation countersuit. Also this morning in New Jersey, closing arguments underway in the trial for the former Olympian Michael Barisone, accused of 2 counts of attempted murder. Let's get you back into the courtroom live. His attorney is delivering the close. Let's go back in live.
7 minutes. So we have the 911 call. We have her beating Barisone in this area. How do the phones get on the umbrella base 10, 12, 13 yards away? All supposedly after being shot. Does that make sense to you? Is it physically impossible for someone to be shot in the chest twice and do all that? Let's look at Robert Goodwin's testimony. I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that based on what you know about Robert Goodwin, that he would do or say anything to help Lauren Canarac. After all, she's the one paying for everything. She's the one getting them free living accommodations. She's paying him to hang around with the horses. Remember, he is one of the people, him and the father, who had a plan to destroy Michael Barisone. He was the one, ladies and gentlemen, that purchased all the recorders and cameras. He was the person that was secreting the recorders and then retrieving them on behalf of Lauren Canarac. He's the one, ladies and gentlemen, who wrote the letter to the town. He's the one, ladies and gentlemen, that turned off the camera that would have captured this entire incident. In his original statement, he said he only heard shots. In this courtroom, before you, he claims that he actually saw Michael Barisone shooting. Totally different, inconsistent with his statement the night of the incident. Some things that Goodwin did say that are helpful. Michael Barisone was never violent. Michael Barisone never threatened him or Lauren Canarac. He totally disputed the prosecutor's statement that Michael was angry and furious at the time of the shooting. Described him, as I said, calm and sorrowful. But he also lied to you. He told you the same lie about those recordings. And again, I'm not going to go into the transcript with the lawyer, but clearly, ladies and gentlemen, those recordings were not all made from Lauren Canarak's locker. In his original statement, he said the same thing Canarak said in her original statement, that she disappeared. He testified in this courtroom that Canarak only hit Barisone in the face a few times. That's inconsistent with the 7-minute beating that Canarak posted about. What's also important, and I don't know how much significance you think this is, neither of them ever mentioned that their dog had attacked Michael Barisone. And we're not talking about a simple nipping. You heard medical testimony from the doctor that treated Michael Barisone that he had numerous puncture wounds all over his body. One of which was a puncture wound to his inside groin area. How did that happen? When did that happen? Why didn't Canarak, why didn't Goodwin ever mention that the dog was mauling Michael Barisone? And what I submit should offend you is the prosecutor introducing a cute photograph of the dog in the background, just sitting up and, very, very calmly. That dog attacked Ruth Cox. That dog attacked Michael Barisone. That dog even attacked the police officer who arrived on the scene. His name is Rosie. I'm calling it Cujo. Why would the prosecutor even think about introducing that photograph? What possible reason other than to try to give you a different impression? The defense put on two highly qualified, distinguished experts. Those two experts, ladies and gentlemen, I believe are far more compelling and believable than the state's one expert. They spent more time with Michael Barisone and did a much more thorough evaluation than the state's doctor, Dr. Schlesinger. Most important, Dr. Simmering saw Michael Barisone soon after the incident, within a month, and he testified, and was never disputed by the state's doctor, that it's important, and you get a better sense of what happened and a better evaluation if you evaluate someone close in time to the incident. Does that make sense to anybody? Is that psychological mumbo-jumbo? It's important that when you're considering these experts, the defense and the state, that you consider that the defense experts do both work for the prosecutor's office and defense lawyers. if you look at Dr. Simring and his testimony, his credentials were amazing. His experience was amazing. And what's important and what you should consider is that he's been hired numerous times by the Morris County Prosecutor's Office. This office that is prosecuting this case. He's indicated he's been retained. He's been relied on by that office many times. It's going to be interesting to see how the prosecutor attacks him when their office has used him numerous times. Dr. Simring is a psychiatrist, a medical doctor. He's clearly more educated, has more experience than the state's Dr. Schlesinger in evaluating people in criminal cases. What's odd, ladies and gentlemen, is that although Dr. Schlesinger, the state expert, says, I disagree with Dr. Simring's diagnosis, he never explained why or what the basis was. Clearly, he had no problem attacking Dr. Hassan, one of the defense experts, after Dr. Hassan corrected and questioned the method and scoring of the test he gave Michael Barisone. I submit to you, it seemed like almost a personal attack. Like, how dare you question me? When someone says things on the stand like, geez, I don't want to be too critical of someone, and then clearly goes out of their way to attack them, you should question their testimony. The fact is, with regards to the state expert, Dr. Schlesinger, he spent, and I timed it, 45 minutes talking about himself and all his awards. He spent no time telling you why he disagreed with Dr. Simring. He also testified, and I asked you to recall this point, that he only spent about an hour or so testing Michael Barisone. That's only 15 minutes more than him talking about himself. The state's doctor Dr. Schlesinger said he only spent 13 hours total with Michael Barisone as compared to 37 hours that Dr. Hassan, one of the defense experts, spent. I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that the state's expert's testimony appeared rehearsed, scripted. How many times did he volunteer things, talk about providing the prosecutor with the articles or books? Oh, I gave you that article, prosecutor, or that book I gave you. I now know where the prosecutor got those articles that he used to try to attack Dr. Hassan. Why would Dr. Schlesinger give those articles and books to Prosecutor Schellhorn when everybody knows, and it's been testified to, there are an equal number of articles and books in the psychiatric field that say the exact opposite thing? Dr. Schlesinger basically is a hired gun for prosecutors' offices in New Jersey and New York. He testified he has another case with this prosecutor's office. He tried to soften that when I had brought out that my experts do work for both sides. Always have, always will. He tried to soften that by saying, well, the first third of my career, I did work for defense lawyers. The second third, I did both. But basically the last third, I'm doing almost exclusively work for the prosecutor's offices. Well, if you divide up that 30-year career, the last 10 years, all he's been doing is rendering opinions for county prosecutor's offices all over the state. And I'm going to ask you to use your common sense. How long do you think he would keep doing that if he didn't support the prosecutor's position? Not very long. The fact is, and what the evidence, and he didn't even dispute this, he did shorter versions of the tests he gave. He didn't do anywhere near as many tests as Dr. Hassan did. Dr. Hassan took Schlesinger's data, his results, that he hand scored, and put them into a computer program and got a totally different profile.
Edward Belinkus delivering an aggressive closing argument on behalf of his defendant in New Jersey. The defense goes first. If you didn't miss the state, we'll hear from them in a bit. We'll get a break in and get you back to the courtroom live right after this.
At SmileDirectClub.com.
Court TV Live, we're bringing you live coverage of two major trials today. Jury selection is getting underway this hour in the multi-million-dollar defamation case between actors Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. We're also following closing arguments in New Jersey versus Michael Barisone, the former Olympian, facing 2 counts of attempted murder. Barisone's defense argues that the shooting was the end result of a man being driven over and past that breaking point. And his attorney, Edward Belinkus, has been aggressive in his closing argument. Let's go back live and listen to more.
Was real and reality-based. Is he saying that Lauren Cataract is a danger? Is he saying that Lauren Cataract and Robert Goodwin had the wherewithal to kill Michael Barisone, his girlfriend, and their children? If that's the case, if that's something that that doctor can glean just from reviewing the police reports as to what happened, why didn't Washington Township Police Department, why didn't the Morris County Prosecutor's Office intercede in the numerous times when Michael Barisone told them he was in fear, told them that Lauren Cataract was dangerous, tried to show him all the posts and information that Dr. Schlesinger says clearly indicates that she is a danger and a danger is imminent. Remember, those 2 people are the state's case. Dr. Schlesinger then tries to bolster his opinion by saying, well, because other staff members also felt threatened, that proved his point. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Every person is different. You don't need to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist to understand that. Some people are more susceptible to others. Look at all the people that you know. You know, is somebody stronger? Does someone hear or handle stress differently? Everybody is unique. Past medical history is also important. Dr. Simmering, Dr. Hassan testified that past psychiatric history, like prior traumatic events, can cause someone to react differently than someone who didn't have those events. Makes sense? Psychological mumbo jumbo? As I said, every person is unique. Every person has a breaking point. Some people are stronger than others. The doctors that the defense put on looked at Michael Barisone as an individual differently than Schlesinger's general statements. They said that based on his past mental health issues, that specific things that were done to him caused him to react differently than others. The state's doctor never addressed Michael Barisone's unique circumstances. And again, let me point out an example why I think it's important. Cataract does something to both Mary Haskins Gray and Michael Barisone. Mary Haskins Gray is afraid. Michael Barisone crawls up in a fetal position, is inconsolable, and is crying hysterically. She testified that that happened numerous times. Clearly, Barisone is in a much different position than Haskins and everyone else at the farm. He's the owner of the farm. It's his business that they're attacking, not Gray's, not anyone else. He's the one responsible for protecting everyone. Most of the attacks are directed specifically towards him. That he abuses horses, is a criminal, did insurance fraud, that he is the one that has bullied Cataract and threatened her life. All those false allegations were against him, not anyone else. They have a different impact on him and everyone else. The house that he fled was his house. Haskins was just a girlfriend. No history, no investment in that property. It makes a difference. If I'm someplace that I don't own and something happens, I could just leave. It's different when you leave your own house. It causes you to react differently. Michael Barisone had no one there to help him or protect him. Mary Haskins Gray had Barisone. Mary Haskins Gray had her father come and try to protect him. Michael Barisone was in a unique position. Michael Barisone was the one that Robert Goodwin took his hand, made it in the gesture of a gun, pulled the trigger, and told him the day before the shooting to get ready. Get ready. Get ready. I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that his unique psychiatric history, the fact that the majority of threats were directed at him and his business, and the fact that he was the sole person responsible, puts him in a much different category. And when you're discussing his mental state and what effect these things had on him, don't go with Schlesinger's general statement that, well, the other people were afraid too. Totally different. No one else, ladies and gentlemen, were calling people to try to get help, like Michael Barisone was. No one fled his own home. No one hired a private investigator to do background checks on them. No one spent $5,000. Think about this. When the prosecutor maybe comes up with some cockamamie story with regards to a financial issue or problem. Steve Tarshis testified that Barisone was worth millions. No one else filed a complaint with SafeSport against Cataract. Now, I'm sure the prosecutor's going to make some argument with regards to why this happened. If the prosecutor suggests to you that the motive is that Michael Barisone thought a complaint was going to be made against him with SafeSport, and that's the reason why he wanted to kill Lauren Cataract, then when he says those words, I want you to think, well, Michael Barisone filed a complaint against Lauren Cataract. Does she have a motive to kill him? You can't have it both ways. That's what I'm saying. Think about everything that's said to you. No one else called 911 on 4 separate occasions. No one else was turned away and felt as helpless when the police and the Morris County Prosecutor's Office wouldn't help him, didn't even want to look at the documents, the things that he had amassed in this investigation that he was doing on Cataract. He even personally went to the Washington Township Police Department and tried to plead with them for help. What impact would that have on someone different than everyone else? When you call the people that are supposed to protect you and they do nothing, what impact does that have on someone's state of mind? He also hired a personal security guard, Mr. Davison, to sit in his truck to guard the stable area. I submit he had a lawyer write letters and serve a complaint. That, coupled with all the things that Cataract was doing specifically to him, puts him in a unique category that you should consider. Remember, what was Cataract's motivation? She admitted to a plan to destroy him and the business. That plan included attacking him on social media, accusing him falsely of neglecting horses, insurance fraud, falsely claiming bullying and threatening her life. She had a plan to scare him. Remember the text that that I questioned her about? We have to scare Michael Barisone. And then the various texts after that where she's talking about Michael Barisone being scared. Totally different circumstances. I submit that she had a plan to cause him to flee his own house by scaring him, talking about weapons incessantly, sleeping with a gun underneath her pillow, having 2 guns, 2 9mm guns.
Edward Blinkus delivering a closing argument on behalf of his client, Michael Barisone. More after the break. Stay with us.
Your jewelry with Worthy.com.
Welcome back. We're watching 2 courtrooms this hour. Jury selection beginning in Virginia in the multi-million-dollar defamation case between actors Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And in New Jersey, closing arguments underway in the trial of New Jersey versus Michael Barisone. The former Olympian equestrian has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder for shooting at his tenants, Lauren Cataract and Robert Goodwin. Barisone's attorney is spending a lot of time on those two in his closing arguments, basically saying they drove his client insane after harassing him on social media and calling Child Protective Services and other people from town on him. Let's go back in live. Edward Belinkis finishing up his close. Remember, the defense goes first in New Jersey, so we haven't heard from the state yet.
It's not something we're setting forth after the fact, prior to the incident. And the prosecutor could have called all these people if he wanted to give you the real picture. All of those witnesses, and I think I put on 23, 24 different people, all of them testified to various observations they made about his decline. Some of them were graphic. I'll name a few. Not sleeping, not bathing, eating, wandering the property at night, unable to carry on a conversation, incapable of handling simple business affairs, crying, sobbing, hysterically in a fetal position. Those people compared Barisone before and after Lauren Canarak's attacks. He went from this confident, elegant, dignified man to a distraught, disheveled person, pacing aimlessly, mumbling to himself, was described as catatonic. If you recall, the town official, Ms. Gibbs Cook, said on the 6th she could barely recognize who he was from how she had known him before. She described him as undone. Her words. Many of those people who had known him for years, in seeing this decline, thought he was going to kill himself. And numerous people, Olympic athletes, testified that they called and they tried to console him. He was unconsolable. All because of Canarak, Goodwin, and the father's attacks. Justin Hardin, who was a state's witness, who has known Michael Barisone for 17 years, described him as out of his mind. Others testified he was unable to function. The one thing Justin Hardin said, which to me hits home, is Michael Barisone's love for horses, love for riding. He stopped riding. He stopped teaching, training people in horses. That speaks volume as to his mental decline. All these people testified as to Michael Barisone's systematic destruction of him. All at the hands of Canarak. It was her plan, and her plan worked. They drove him crazy. The state wants you to believe that Michael Barisone, after experiencing this level of deterioration, was capable, after the severe beating that he got from Robert Goodwin, after he was choked unconscious, how somehow, miraculously, he flipped a switch and had the presence of mind to make up a story. I don't remember the event. This is totally inconsistent with every piece of evidence that has been put before you. The prosecutor's going to suggest, I assume, that after all of this, that Michael Barisone should be taken with regards to his statements as an admission of his guilt. When he starts talking about that, recall all the evidence of his mental state when these statements were allegedly made. I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that every single person, the police officers, the medical people that were treating him, everyone had indicated that when Michael Barisone was asked about the events, he had no recollection. So his rambling statements, I had a good life, they destroyed my life. What does that mean? Under those circumstances, in his condition, I submitted the ramblings from a man suffering from a mental breakdown, a man who's delusional. What's outrageous, ladies and gentlemen, is the prosecutor's attempt to argue that Michael Barisone's statement at the hospital, "I'm sorry," was an admission of guilt. That detective couldn't testify to the circumstances where the statement was made. Any context. He didn't even know the exact words. He said, well, words to the effect. What should concern you is that the detective didn't remember who was there, whether or not he was talking to anyone, and doesn't remember the exact words. I ask you to remember that with regards to that statement, "I'm sorry," it was not contained in his detailed notes that he took contemporaneous with everything that was going on. He also never put or testified on direct examination that before that statement, Michael Barisone was injected with 100 milligrams of fentanyl. Fentanyl. Prior to that statement. Why didn't the prosecutor bring that out? Isn't that important? Aren't those details something that you should consider? Before you're deciding whether or not that's an admission of guilt, don't you think you should have all the facts? And even though there is no burden on the defense, I don't need to do or say anything. Don't you think things like that would be important in you assessing what that statement meant? Why is the defense constantly bringing out things differently than what's originally proposed to you? I ask you to recall also that that report was dated over 2 months later. Tried to explain to well the report. There's no evidence of that. You have his testimony. The next cop that took the stand, I asked him the same thing with regard to the date of the report, and he says that's when the report was written. What's going on here, ladies and gentlemen? And if you believe what every medical person said about Michael Barisone not remembering the specific incident, I submit you can't be sorry for something you don't remember. And again, this is the linchpin of the state's doctor's diagnosis. That's all he talked about. You have 2 doctors that the defense put on that address this issue, address, again, the concern of the state doctor that someone charged with a criminal defense may feign symptoms, may fake. Dr. Schlesinger, never suggested that Barisone was faking the things that happened to him before the incident. He focused solely on...
is winding down. We'll get a break in here, pick up the end of his closing argument to this jury. Then it's time for the state. Back after this.
3,200 now.
Welcome back. Testimony in our next live trial could begin as soon as tomorrow. It is the high-profile defamation case between actors Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Jury selection is underway right now in Fairfax, Virginia. And, of course, in New Jersey, the fate of former Olympian Michael Barisone will soon be in the hands of the jury. He's accused of attempting to murder his former tenants. Closing arguments finishing up on the defense. Let's go back in live. It's the state's turn next. Go in.
That is what this country, our legal system, is based upon. I submit, ladies and gentlemen, the defense has established clearly that Michael Barisone was insane at the time of the incident. He was suffering from a mental defect, a delusional disorder, and did not know the nature and quality of his actions, and did not know right from wrong. What Lauren Canarac, Robert Goodwin, and the father did to him was horrible. Horrible. They had a plan to destroy Michael Barisone. Don't let them use you to do the job, to finish the bastard. Find Michael Barisone not guilty. It is the right and just thing to do. Thank you.
I thank the counsel. Ladies